It was one of those mornings when the world feels too heavy for a little heart to carry. The rain had just stopped, leaving puddles glistening under the dull gray sky. The city was waking up, people rushing past, umbrellas in hand, eyes glued to their phones, too busy to notice the little barefoot girl walking along the wet sidewalk. Her name was Maya. She was just 8 years old. Her clothes were torn, her hair tangled, but her eyes carried a light that refused to fade no matter how dark her world seemed. She clutched an old glass bottle against her chest, empty, cold, and almost as fragile as the hope she still held on to. Every morning, Maya walked through this street, peeking through store windows, watching others buy things she could only dream of. A loaf of bread, a cup of warm coffee, a carton of milk. Today, her little brother was sick. He hadn't eaten since last night. Their mother worked all day cleaning houses and barely earned enough for rent. There was no food left, but Maya had made a promise to her brother that she'd bring him something to drink before he woke up. So there she was, standing outside a small grocery store at the corner of the street. The smell of fresh bread and warm milk floated out every time the glass door opened. Inside, the shopkeeper counted his money, unaware of the little pair of eyes watching him from outside. Maya took a deep breath. Her heart pounded in her chest as she stepped inside. The bell above the door chimed softly, and the shopkeeper looked up. He frowned. "What do you want, kid?" he asked, his voice rough but curious. Maya hesitated, clutching her bottle tighter. "Sir, can I please have some milk?" she whispered, her voice trembling, almost lost between the humming of the refrigerator and the clinking of bottles. The shopkeeper raised an eyebrow. "Do you have money?" Maya shook her head slowly, eyes fixed on the floor. "No, sir. I don't, but I promise I'll pay you when I grow up." For a moment, the shop went silent. The man stared at her, half confused, half amused. Then he let out a short laugh, not cruel but dismissive. "When you grow up?" he repeated. "Little girl, the world doesn't work on promises." No money, no milk. Maya's heart sank. She looked down at her old shoes and the soles nearly gone, and felt tears sting her eyes. But she didn't cry. She just nodded and turned to leave. And that's when something unexpected happened. Outside the store, a shiny black car had just pulled over. The door opened and a tall man stepped out, dressed in an expensive suit, his shoes shining against the muddy ground. His name was Mr. Thomas, a millionaire businessman known throughout the city. He had stopped by the store to grab a quick drink before his morning meeting. But as he walked toward the entrance, he saw her, the little girl with the bottle, standing quietly wiping her tears. Something about that sight made him pause. For a moment, the world seemed to slow down. The rain dripped from the edge of the roof. A dog barked in the distance. And all Mr. Thomas could see was that child. Small, fragile, but holding herself with a kind of quiet dignity that even money couldn't buy. He stepped closer. "Hey there, are you okay?" he asked gently. Maya quickly shook her head, forcing a smile. "I'm fine, sir," she said softly. Mr. Thomas tilted his head. "What's that bottle for?" She hesitated, then told him everything. About her brother, about how she promised to bring milk, and how she'd pay when she grew up. Her voice cracked halfway, but she finished her sentence bravely. The millionaire stood there in silence for a long moment. He looked at the shopkeeper, then back at the girl. Something inside him shifted, a memory perhaps of his own childhood. Once upon a time he too had known hunger, though the world had long forgotten that version of him. Without another word, he walked inside the store. The shopkeeper greeted him cheerfully, not realizing what was about to happen. Mr. Thomas picked up a carton of milk, paid for it, and turned toward the little girl. "Here you go," he said with a warm smile. Handing her the milk, Maya's eyes widened. "But sir, I told you." "I don't have money." "I know," he replied softly. "You don't need to pay me back. Just make sure that one day when you're grown you help someone else, the way you wish someone had helped you today." For a second, Maya couldn't speak. She took the milk with trembling hands, her eyes filling with tears she could no longer hold back. "Thank you, sir," she whispered, her voice barely audible. Mr. Thomas smiled, patted her shoulder gently, and walked back to his car. As he drove away, Maya stood there watching, a small figure in the rain holding that bottle close to her heart like it was the most precious thing in the world. She didn't know his name or how rich he was. All she knew was that kindness still existed, and she made a silent promise to never forget it. Sometimes a small act of kindness can echo across years, touching lives in ways we can't yet imagine. For that little girl, a simple glass of milk was more than just food. It was hope, a reminder that no matter how cruel the world seems, there will always be someone willing to care. As Mr. Thomas drove away through the misty streets, he couldn't stop thinking about the little girl with the empty bottle. He had given away milk countless times in charity events, donated to schools, and signed off on checks worth millions. But this time it felt different. This was not about charity. It was about connection, a reminder of something he had long buried under years of success and wealth. He remembered his own childhood, a tiny village, a small wooden house, and a mother who used to skip her meals so he could eat. He remembered standing in line outside a bakery, watching others buy bread while he counted coins that were never enough. Life had changed drastically since then, but that morning as he saw Maya's trembling hands, the little boy inside him woke up again. He whispered to himself, "Maybe I needed her as much as she needed that milk." When he reached his office, the world of business swallowed him whole again, meetings, calls, papers, deadlines. Yet somewhere in the corner of his mind, the image of that small girl lingered. That one act of kindness, small and simple, had left an imprint on his heart. Meanwhile, back in her tiny home, Maya rushed to her brother with the bottle of milk. His face lit up the moment he took a sip. "You got it," he said, smiling weakly. Maya nodded proudly. She didn't tell him how she got it, she just whispered, "A kind man helped me." Their mother returned late that evening, exhausted but smiling when she saw her children asleep, her son with an empty glass beside him and Maya curled up next to him. She didn't know what miracle had brought milk into their house that day, but she thanked God softly before turning off the light. Days turned into weeks, weeks into years. Life wasn't easy for Maya, but she carried that memory, the stranger's kindness, like a light inside her. Whenever she felt like giving up, she remembered his words. One day, help someone else the way you wish someone had helped you. She studied under streetlights, borrowed old books, and worked tirelessly. Many laughed at her dreams, a poor girl wanting to become a doctor, but she never stopped believing. Every challenge, every hunger pang, every sleepless night reminded her of that milk and the warmth it brought to her soul. Maya learned early that kindness doesn't require money. It requires heart. And the heart that once begged for a glass of milk now burned with a desire to heal others. Years later, after scholarships, struggles, and endless hard work, Maya finally wore a white coat with her name stitched on it, Dr. Maya Johnson. The same girl who once promised to pay when she grew up was now ready to give back to the world, not with money, but with compassion. But fate has its own mysterious ways. One rainy evening, a familiar sound echoed through the hospital, the siren of an ambulance. Nurses rushed toward the emergency ward. Inside, an unconscious man was being brought in. His condition was critical, severe exhaustion and heart complications. His wallet fell from his pocket as they transferred him to a bed. On it, a name tag read, Mr. Thomas Green. Maya froze. Her heart skipped a beat. That name, it rang in her memory like a forgotten melody. Could it be the same man? The kind stranger who once gave her milk when she had nothing? Without wasting a second, she took charge of his treatment. For days and nights, she barely left his side. She didn't tell anyone why she cared so much. She just knew that this was her moment. Her promise was calling her back. Life has a strange way of bringing stories full circle. What we give with love never truly disappears. It finds its way back to us often when we least expect it. Days passed slowly in the quiet hum of the hospital. Machines beeped, nurses whispered, and doctors moved swiftly between rooms. Yet inside Ward 17, time seemed to stand still. Dr. Maya Johnson sat beside her patient, watching the steady rise and fall of his chest. Mr. Thomas had been in a coma for nearly a week. His body was weak, but his spirit, she believed, was still strong. Every time she looked at him, memories flooded her heart. The sound of rain, the smell of warm milk, the gentle voice that once told her, "Be kind to others." She couldn't forget it. That moment had shaped her destiny, and now life had brought her back to the man who unknowingly changed her world. Her colleagues often asked, "Dr. Maya, why do you spend so much time with this one patient?" She only smiled and said, "Because some debts are paid not in money, but in love." One morning, as sunlight spilled through the window, a faint movement caught her attention. Mr. Thomas's fingers twitched. His eyelids fluttered open. After days of silence, his weary eyes finally met hers. He tried to speak, his voice weak and shaky. "Where am I?" "You're in St. Mary's Hospital," Maya said softly, her smile warm but emotional. "You've been here for several days. But you're safe now." He looked around, confused, then back at her. You stayed with me?" Maya nodded gently. "Yes, sir." There was something in her eyes and something familiar. He couldn't place it, but it stirred a memory deep inside him. "Do I know you?" he asked, his brows furrowed. She paused, her heart pounding. Then she reached for his hand, the same way he once handed her a bottle of milk years ago. "A long time ago," she began, her voice trembling. "There was a little girl who came to your store. She didn't have any money, but she asked for milk for her brother. You gave it to her, and you told her to help someone else when she grew up." Mr. Thomas's eyes widened. Tears welled up instantly. His lips parted in disbelief. You're that girl?" Maya nodded, her eyes glistening. "Yes, sir. I promised to pay you when I grew up. And today, I finally have." For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The room was filled with nothing but the soft sound of the heart monitor and the echo of unspoken gratitude. Mr. Thomas's eyes filled with tears, not of sadness, but of overwhelming peace. He whispered, "All these years, I thought I'd given you a simple glass of milk, but you've given me back my faith in humanity." Maya smiled through her tears. "You didn't just give me milk that day. You gave me hope. You made me believe that good still exists. That one act changed my entire life. And in that small, quiet room, two souls realized the true power of kindness, that a single act, no matter how small, can ripple through time and return when you least expect it." As Mr. Thomas recovered, he insisted on paying for a new children's health clinic, one that would provide free food and medical care to poor families. He named it the Promise Foundation. When the ribbon was cut on the opening day, a little plaque read, "Inspired by a girl who once promised to pay when she grew up. Remember, kindness never fades. What you give from the heart may leave your hands, but it never leaves this world. One glass of milk can change a life. And one promise can change the world." Months passed since the grand opening of the Promise Foundation. The once empty plot of land was now alive with colors. Walls painted with smiling faces, classrooms filled with chatter, and a small clinic that treated every child, whether they could pay or not. At the entrance, a small marble plaque shimmered under the sun, "Inspired by a girl who promised to pay when she grew up." Every morning, Dr. Maya Johnson arrived early, wearing the same gentle smile she always had, the one that carried both pride and gratitude. She greeted the children, checked their health, and made sure no one left hungry. Each time she handed a glass of milk to a child, her heart whispered, "This is what it means to pay your promise." Mr. Thomas, though now older and slower, visited often. He'd sit on the wooden bench near the garden, watching the children run around. Their laughter was his favorite sound. Sometimes he'd close his eyes, listening, and think about how one rainy morning years ago had led to all of this. One afternoon, Maya joined him on the bench holding 2 cups of tea. "You know," she said softly, handing him one, "when I was little, I thought success meant money, having enough to never be hungry again. But now I know success means feeding others, not just yourself." Mr. Thomas chuckled lightly, his eyes shining. "And to think," he said, "it all started with a bottle of milk." They both laughed quietly. For a moment, neither of them was a doctor or a millionaire. They were just two hearts connected by kindness. Two souls who understood the value of giving without expecting anything in return. Narrator, reflective tone. Sometimes, the smallest act can create the biggest legacy. A single drop of kindness can ripple through generations, touching lives we may never even meet. Years went by. The Promise Foundation expanded to other towns. Thousands of children were fed, treated, and educated. Maya became a symbol of hope, featured in newspapers and invited to speak about compassion. But she never let fame touch her heart. She always said, "This story isn't about me. It's about what kindness can do when you believe in it." Maya's voice echoes, "Don't wait to be rich to help someone. You don't need money to be kind, Abayaman. You just need the courage to care. The audience applauds. Cameras flash. Yet even in that crowd, Maya's mind returns to that rainy morning, to the feeling of holding an empty bottle, to the sound of a kind man saying, "Help someone else when you grow up." Gascom, however, moves forward for everyone. Mr. Thomas, now frail but content, lies in his hospital bed, surrounded by flowers and pictures of children from the Promise Foundation. Maya sits beside him, her eyes glistening but calm. He looks at her one last time and says, "You kept your promise, Maya. You changed the world." She holds his hand and whispers, "No, sir. We changed the world. You just started it." Tears slip down Maya's cheeks, but she smiles through them. She doesn't see loss, she sees legacy. The same man who once gave her milk had now given her something far greater, a reason to keep giving, a story to keep telling. People say miracles are rare, but sometimes a miracle is just a moment of kindness, small enough to fit in a child's hands, strong enough to move the world. She whispers to herself, "I promise to pay when I grow up, and I will keep paying, not with money, but with kindness." They say life is a circle. What you give always comes back to you, often in ways you never imagined. For Maya, the little girl who once stood in the rain with an empty bottle, life had come full circle. Years had passed since Mr. Thomas's passing, but his presence lived on, not just in memories, but in every child who smiled under the roof of the Promise Foundation. Each morning, Maya walked through those gates, her stethoscope hanging around her neck, her hair tied neatly, and her eyes glowing with the same determination she had as a child. She would pause at the marble plaque near the entrance, inspired by a girl who promised to pay when she grew up. Her fingers brushed over the words every day, a silent reminder of her journey from hunger to healing, from being helped to helping others. Sometimes, she would still see her younger self in the children who came to her clinic, shy, barefoot, and hungry. She always knelt down to their level, smiled, and said the same words that once changed her life. "You don't have to pay me. Just promise me that one day you'll help someone else." As the days went by, Maya's foundation grew into a network of hope across cities. Hospitals, schools, and small shelters carried her name, but she never called them hers. "This is his dream," she would say in interviews. "I'm just continuing it." But Maya didn't care about fame or titles. For her, success wasn't standing on a stage. It was kneeling beside a child's bed, holding their hand and seeing them smile again. Each time she saw a life saved, she silently thanked the man who once gave her milk without asking for anything in return. Crowds gather, children, volunteers, parents, and reporters. Maya steps up to the podium holding a framed photograph of Mr. Thomas. She looks around the smiling faces, the camera lights flashing, and begins to speak. 10 years ago, I opened this foundation with one goal, to make sure no child ever goes hungry or feels forgotten. But this story didn't begin with me. It began with a man who showed me kindness when I had nothing to offer. A man who taught me that the greatest wealth we can have is compassion. He once told me, "Help someone else when you grow up." And I did. But the truth is, I didn't just grow up in age, I grew up in heart. I learned that giving isn't about money or power. It's about remembering what it feels like to need help and choosing to be that help for someone else. She pauses, her eyes glancing toward the sky. "Mr. Thomas, wherever you are, I kept my promise, and I'll keep it for the rest of my life." At that moment, it felt as if heaven itself had smiled. Time skip. Several years later, Maya, now older, walks through a busy street in the rain. She wears a simple coat and carries an umbrella. The city around her has changed. New buildings, new faces, but the same rhythm of life beats on as she passes a small grocery store. Something catches her eye. A little girl standing outside in the rain holding a glass bottle. Maya stops. The girl is about 8 years old, shivering, her hair drenched, her eyes filled with the same mixture of fear and hope that once lived in Maya's own eyes. She watches as the child hesitates before stepping inside the store. The shopkeeper frowns, then shakes his head. The little girl looks down, ready to leave. Maya steps forward quietly, placing a gentle hand on her shoulder. "Is everything okay, sweetheart?" The little girl looks up and whispers, "I just wanted some milk for my brother. He's sick, but I don't have money." She kneels down, takes off her coat. wraps it around the girl and says softly, "Come with me." "You don't need to pay me," she says, echoing the words that once changed her own fate. "Just promise me that when you grow up you'll help someone else." Maya smiles, her heart full. As she watches the child run through the rain, her figure slowly blurs into the distance. Maya turns her gaze toward the cloudy sky and whispers, "It's your turn now." And just like that, the circle continued. A promise once made under gray skies found its way into another heart. Because kindness doesn't end. It passes on, from one soul to another, from one generation to the next. Years later, the Promise Foundation is now a global network. Buildings across different countries display the same logo, two hands holding a milk bottle symbolizing care and hope. Time went on, and the world changed. But what never changed was the power of one small act of kindness. The Promise Foundation continued to grow, from one city to a country, from one country to many. Thousands of volunteers carried the same spirit, repeating the same words, "Help someone else when you grow up." And in every branch, at every event, there stood a portrait of Mr. Thomas and Dr. Maya, side by side, the giver and the receiver, both bound by the same promise. She writes, "If I could go back in time, I would tell my younger self, don't be ashamed of needing help, because one day you'll be the help someone else needs." She closes the diary, places it on her desk beside a small glass bottle, the same one she carried as a child. She smiles softly. Outside, the sound of children laughing fills the air. And so, the girl who once asked for milk became the woman who nourished millions. Her life was proof that kindness, no matter how small, can ripple endlessly across time.